75%. That's how much of Canada's economy depends on selling to one country. And once you understand that number, you'll understand what Trump discovered. There is one thing no country can escape. Not Canada, not Europe, not even China. It's not the military, and it's why no one can say no, the dollar. And once you understand how this weapon actually works, you'll never look at Trump's foreign policy the same way again. Let me explain. After World War II, the world was broken. Europe was rubble. Asia was devastated. The only industrial economy left standing was America. So in 1944, representatives from 44 countries gathered at a resort in New Hampshire called Bretton Woods. And they made a decision that would shape the next 80 years of human history. They agreed that the US dollar would become the world's reserve currency. Every country would hold dollars. Every country would trade in dollars. Every country would price their oil, their commodities, their debt in dollars. At the time, it made sense. America had the gold. America had the factories. America had the stability. But here's what nobody anticipated. They created a trap. Here's how the trap works. If you're a country that wants to buy oil, you need dollars. If you want to import electronics, you need dollars. If you want to service your debt, you need dollars. But there's only one place on earth that can print dollars. Washington. That means every country on earth needs to maintain a relationship with America. Not because they want to, because they have to. And it gets worse. Let me show you the real weapon. There's a system called SWIFT, the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication. It sounds boring. It's not. SWIFT is the nervous system of global finance. Every time a bank in Germany sends money to a bank in Japan, it goes through SWIFT. Every time an oil company in Saudi Arabia gets paid by a refinery in India, it goes through SWIFT. 40 million transactions a day, 11,000 banks, 200 countries. And here's the part that should terrify every foreign leader on earth. America controls SWIFT, not officially, but effectively. The system runs on dollars, operates under American law, and answers to American regulators, which means America can kick any country out of the global financial system with a phone call. Don't believe? Let me tell you what happened to Iran. In 2018, Trump pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal. Then he reimposed sanctions. Within months, Iran was cut off from SWIFT. Think about what that means. Iranian banks couldn't send or receive money from anywhere on earth. Iranian businesses couldn't pay their suppliers. Iranian citizens couldn't access their savings abroad. The Iranian rial collapsed, lost 80% of its value in a year. Inflation hit 40%. The economy contracted by 6%, all without firing a single shot, all without deploying a single soldier. Just dollars, just SWIFT, just leverage. Now here's where it gets interesting. You might think, surely other countries have figured out a way around this. Surely they've built alternatives. Surely they're not just sitting there waiting to be sanctioned. You'd be wrong. Europe tried. After Trump sanctioned Iran, the European Union created something called Instex, a special payment channel designed to bypass American sanctions. It processed exactly 0 transactions. Why? Because any European bank that touched Instex would be cut off from the American financial system. And no bank on earth is willing to give up access to America to help Iran buy medicine. The weapon is self-enforcing. And this isn't ancient history. This is happening right now. In 2023, the Biden administration sanctioned Russia for invading Ukraine. Within weeks, over $300 billion in Russian central bank reserves were frozen. $300 billion. Gone. Inaccessible. Sitting in Western banks that Russia can see but cannot touch. Putin thought he was prepared. He spent years building up reserves, gold, foreign currency, rainy day funds for exactly this scenario. Didn't matter. Because the reserves were held in dollars, in euros, in institutions that answer to Washington. The Russian finance ministry watched their war chest evaporate in real time. And here's what made it worse. The oligarchs got hit too. Yachts seized in Italy, mansions frozen in London, bank accounts locked in Switzerland. These are men who spent decades moving their money out of Russia, specifically to protect it from their own government. They never imagined the West would come for it. Now they're trapped. Their money is in the West, but they can't access it. And they can't bring it home because Putin would take it. That's the beauty of dollar dominance. It doesn't just punish governments. It punishes everyone who ever trusted the system. Let me give you another example. Afghanistan. When the Taliban took over in 2021, the United States froze $7 billion in Afghan central bank reserves. $7 billion. That's money that belonged to the Afghan people, money that was supposed to pay teachers and doctors and government workers. Gone. The Afghan economy collapsed. Banks ran out of cash. Civil servants went unpaid for months. Not because of war, not because of Taliban policy, because America turned off the money. One decision in Washington, millions of people in Kabul couldn't feed their families. That's power. But here's what makes it even more powerful. It's not just the threat of being cut off. It's the threat of being cut off from everyone else who might also be cut off. Let me explain. If America sanctions Russia and you're a German company, you now have a choice. You can keep doing business with Russia, or you can keep doing business with America. You cannot do both. And here's the math. America is a $28 trillion economy. Russia is a $2 trillion economy. German companies aren't going to give up the American market to keep selling ball bearings to Moscow, so they comply, not because they agree with the sanctions, but because the cost of defying them is financial suicide. This is the leverage Trump understood from day one. Forget the tweets, forget the rallies, forget the personality. Look at what he actually did. He threatened tariffs on Canada. Canada's economy is 75% dependent on American trade. They had no choice but to negotiate. He threatened tariffs on Europe. The European Union runs a $200 billion surplus with America. They couldn't afford a trade war. He threatened tariffs on China. Chinese manufacturers rely on American consumers. The Communist Party needs economic growth to maintain legitimacy. In every single case, the pattern was the same. Threaten. Watch them panic. Use the leverage. Watch them cave. And the caving is accelerating. In 2025, Trump announced Liberation Day tariffs. Europe published a €93 billion retaliation list. Bourbon, Harley-Davidsons, soybeans, Boeing. What happened? They dropped it. Not because they wanted to, because they calculated the cost. And the cost was too high. Germany's auto industry exports €200 billion worth of cars. 30% of that goes to America. One tariff on BMWs and the entire German economy goes into recession. So they negotiated. They tripled their own tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles. They increased defense spending. They gave Trump everything he wanted. And in exchange, they got to pretend they weren't surrendering. Now let me tell you the story that proves this isn't just about Europe. In 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine. The West responded with the most comprehensive sanctions package in history. Russia was partially cut off from SWIFT. Their central bank reserves were frozen. Their oligarchs were sanctioned. And what happened? The ruble collapsed. Then it recovered. Then Russia found workarounds through China and India. But here's what everyone missed. Russia didn't escape the dollar trap. They just traded one dependency for another. Now they're dependent on China, and China isn't stupid. They see what happened to Russia. They see how America weaponized the financial system. They know they could be next. So what are they doing? China is trying to build an alternative. They created their own payment system called CIPS. They're pushing other countries to settle trade in yuan. They're stockpiling gold. But here's the problem. The Chinese yuan makes up 3% of global reserves. The dollar makes up 58%. 3% versus 58%. China isn't close. They're not even in the same universe. And there's a reason. To replace the dollar, you need three things. First, you need deep liquid capital markets where anyone can invest. China has capital controls. You can't freely move money in and out of the country. Second, you need rule of law. Investors need to trust that their assets won't be seized by some party official. China has Xi Jinping. Third, you need everyone else to trust you more than they trust America. China is currently threatening to invade Taiwan. The dollar isn't the reserve currency because America is nice. It's the reserve currency because every alternative is worse. And this is what makes Trump's leverage so devastating. He's not threatening countries with something they can escape. He's threatening them with something they're already trapped in. Canada can't diversify away from America. Their entire economy is built around American consumers. Europe can't build an alternative financial system. They tried. It failed. China can't replace the dollar. Their currency isn't trusted. Their markets aren't open. Their government isn't stable enough. Every country that challenges Trump has to answer one question. Where else are you going to go? And the answer, for almost everyone, is nowhere. The dollar isn't just America's currency, it's America's empire. And Trump figured out how to use it in ways that previous presidents never dared. Let me show you what I mean. When Obama wanted to pressure Iran, he built an international coalition. He got the Europeans on board. He got the UN to pass resolutions. He spent years negotiating. When Trump wanted to pressure Iran, he just pulled out of the deal and reimposed sanctions. The Europeans screamed. They said it was illegal. They said it violated international law. They said they wouldn't comply. Then they complied, because they had no choice. This is the fundamental asymmetry that defines modern geopolitics. America can hurt any country on earth by cutting them off from the dollar system, but no country can hurt America by cutting themselves off. When Russia got sanctioned, they lost access to Western markets. Their companies couldn't raise capital. Their banks couldn't process transactions. But when Russia tried to retaliate, they announced they would only accept rubles for gas. Europe panicked for about a week. Then they figured out a workaround. Russian gas kept flowing. European euros kept paying for it. The ruble for gas scheme was supposed to destroy European dependence on the dollar. It did nothing. Here's why this matters for you. Every piece of trade policy you see in the news, every tariff threat, every sanctions package, every negotiation, it all comes back to this one fact. America controls the plumbing of the global economy, and everyone else is just renting space in the pipes. Now let me tell you what happens next. Trump is in his second term, and he's learned something from the threats work. Canada didn't call his bluff on tariffs. They negotiated. Europe didn't call his bluff on NATO spending. They increased their budgets. China didn't call his bluff on trade. They signed a deal. So now he's pushing harder. Look at what's happening right now. Trump threatened 200% tariffs on European wine. Why? Because Macron said something he didn't like at Davos. 200%. That's not a negotiating tactic. That's a death sentence for French wine exports. And what did Macron do? He sent a private text message to Trump asking for a phone call. The president of France, leader of a nuclear power, founding member of NATO, one of the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council, texting, asking for a meeting, because he knows what happens if Trump actually pulls the trigger. And France isn't even the most vulnerable. Look at Germany. The German economy is built on exports, cars, machinery, chemicals, pharmaceuticals. 40% of German GDP comes from exports, and 15% of those exports go to America. One tariff on German cars, and you wipe out the entire economic model that made Germany the richest country in Europe. BMW, Mercedes, Volkswagen, Audi. All of them depend on American consumers. All of them are one tweet away from crisis. So when Trump says he wants Europe to buy more American LNG, Europe buys more American LNG. When Trump says he wants Europe to increase defense spending to 5%, Europe starts talking about increasing defense spending. When Trump says he wants Greenland, Denmark's prime minister skips Davos to avoid being humiliated in public. The pattern is always the same. America demands, Europe calculates, Europe folds. But here's the part that should really concern you. This isn't just about trade. This is about the future of the international order. For 75 years, America led the world through institutions. NATO, the UN, the WTO, the IMF, the World Bank. These institutions gave smaller countries a voice. They created rules that everyone agreed to follow. They made the international system predictable. Trump doesn't care about institutions. He cares about leverage. And the dollar gives him more leverage than any institution ever could. Think about what this means. If you're a small country, you used to be able to appeal to international law. You could go to the WTO. You could rally support at the UN. Now you have to calculate whether you can afford to be on Trump's bad side. Because if you can't, you'll do whatever he wants. And if you can, well, you're either China or you're lying to yourself. Let me give you the most terrifying example. In 2025, Trump created something called the International Board for Peace. 25 countries signed up. The charter makes Trump chairman for life. The only way to remove him requires a unanimous vote of all members. And here's who wasn't invited. France, Germany, the UK initially refused, Canada, most of Western Europe. Trump didn't just bypass the UN. He built a replacement. And the replacement runs on American rules, American money, American leverage. So what can anyone do about this? Honestly, not much. Europe could try to build a genuine alternative to the dollar system, but that would require the European Union to become a fiscal union with shared debt and shared taxes. That's not happening. Germany won't pay for Italian debt. The Dutch won't subsidize Greek pensions. Europe is 27 countries pretending to be one. And 27 countries can't agree on anything fast enough to challenge American dominance. And it's not just the politics. Look at the economics. The European Central Bank sets interest rates for 20 countries with completely different economies. Greece needs low rates. Germany needs high rates. They both get the same rate. The result? Permanent dysfunction. Southern Europe is stuck in slow growth because monetary policy is designed for Germany. Northern Europe is frustrated because they're subsidizing countries they consider irresponsible. This is supposed to challenge the dollar. The European Union can't even agree on a common fiscal policy. They've been debating euro bonds for 15 years. Still nothing. Meanwhile, America has one treasury, one Federal Reserve, one bond market that everyone on Earth wants to own. European government bonds are fragmented across 27 countries. American treasury bonds are the single most liquid asset on the planet. There's a reason central banks hold dollars, not euros. The euro was supposed to be the alternative, launched in 1999. 25 years later, it's still stuck at 20% of global reserves. 20% versus 58%. And that gap isn't closing, it's widening. Here's something else nobody talks about, the petrodollar. In 1974, the United States made a deal with Saudi Arabia. America would provide military protection. Saudi Arabia would price all its oil in dollars. Every country that wanted Saudi oil had to buy dollars first. That single agreement locked in dollar dominance for 50 years. And even now, when people talk about Saudi Arabia accepting yuan for Chinese oil purchases, look at what actually happens. The Saudis take the yuan, then they convert it to dollars. Then they invest those dollars in American Treasury bonds. The de-dollarization everyone talks about, it's theater. Saudi Arabia still holds over $100 billion in U.S. government debt. Their sovereign wealth fund still invests primarily in American assets. They're not abandoning the dollar. They're just pretending to have options so they can negotiate better terms. Everyone does this. Brazil announces they'll trade with China in yuan. Then they keep their reserves in dollars. India announces a rupee trade agreement with Russia. Then their central bank buys more American bonds. The announcements are politics. The balance sheets are reality. China could try to accelerate the internationalization of the yuan, but that would require opening their capital markets and accepting real rule of law. That's not happening either. The Communist Party will never give up control of the financial system. Xi Jinping will never trust markets he can't manipulate. Russia already tried to escape. Look where it got them. Dependent on China, frozen out of the West, stuck in a war they can't win and can't afford. Which leaves everyone else with two options. Option 1, build real independence. Diversify your trade, develop domestic industries, accept slower growth for greater autonomy. Option 2, accept dependence. Give Trump what he wants. Hope he doesn't ask for too much. And pray the next president is more predictable. The smart money is on option 2, because option 1 takes decades. And Trump is in the White House now. Here's the deeper truth nobody wants to admit. Trump isn't the disease. He's the symptom. The disease is structural. It's baked into the architecture of global finance. It's been building since 1944. America was always going to figure out how to weaponize the dollar system. Trump just figured it out faster than most presidents. And now that the weapon is deployed, it's not going back in the box. The next Democratic president isn't going to give up this leverage. They'll just use it for different goals. Climate policy instead of tariffs. Human rights instead of defense spending. But the leverage will remain because the leverage is the dollar, and the dollar isn't going anywhere. So the next time you see a headline about Trump threatening tariffs, or demanding more defense spending, or pushing some country to do something they clearly don't want to do, don't ask why they're complying. Ask yourself, what choice do they have? The answer, almost always, is none. 75% of Canada's economy, 58% of global reserves, 40 million SWIFT transactions a day. That's not a negotiating position. That's a stranglehold. And right now, Trump's hand is on the throat of every country on earth. They know it. He knows it. And now you know it too.